That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Supervillain, the making of Tekashi 6IX9, a new 3-part docu-series premiering on Showtime February 21st, 2021, directed by Karam Gill, with each segment unspooling over a period of 3 weeks.
So why would I watch this?
Yeah, why?
I think because, I'll tell you. So I'm familiar with who Tekashi 6IX9 is as like a personality.
Sure.
Like I can conjure up an image of like a little rainbow-haired gremlin.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that people called him a snitch. But other than that, I don't know anything else about his music, about why he had issues with the law. So I thought this would be a nice way to just wrap it all up in a nice package. And this documentary does that for someone who doesn't know much about him. Mm-hmm. The basic sort of outline of the documentary is it follows his rise and apparent fall in celebrity and outlines his legal troubles. So Tekashi 6IX9 was born Daniel Hernandez in, is it Bushwick?
1996.
1996. He wants to be famous is sort of the main takeaway from this. Like he wants to be famous, so he starts with like creating clothes that have like inflammatory statements on them, and then starts to create music. He has like some videos that go somewhat viral when he decides to take it to the next level and align himself with a faction of the Bloods. To boost his street cred and his clout. But these gang members are real gang members, so they're involved in like violent crime, drugs. So he gets involved in like a racketeering case. He's arrested along with several other gang members, and he decides to squeal like a pig, and as a result 11 of his fellow gang members get like real prison time, while he gets 8 months on house arrest with time served. So that's where the whole snitch thing comes from. Then we see him released from house arrest in April 2020, and he's back to his old tricks. And the documentary explains that while the song he released right after being released was very popular, subsequent material did not fare as well. So presumably his star is on the decline. That's pretty much it. So the 3 episodes, they have names, but I feel like the names are pointless. Like Power, Identity, whatever. So episode 1 basically talks about his childhood. So one of the main talking heads is his longtime girlfriend named Sarah. He has a child with her. So she explains, so also the documentary doesn't have like they didn't get to interview Daniel Hernandez. So it's basically like archival interview footage along with like pulling clips from like his own social media and then recounts from like close acquaintances.
And he filmed some, was an interview while he was on house arrest that had been heretofore unpublished that there are sound bites from as well.
Limited.
Yes, very limited.
Okay, so episode 1, we find out that he wants to present himself as like having a very rough childhood, but it just sounds like his dad was a heroin addict who left, and then his mom remarried, and that man was very kind to Daniel, but then was murdered. And the way he tells it, it's like he's in these mean streets, but the documentary doesn't really explain like how it happened. Like it could have just been random. Then there's a mechanism that's used throughout all episodes where it's like a stop motion animation of like a doll, and this whole idea of like Tekashi 6IX9 saying he's a supervillain. So it's like the makings of a supervillain, and then there's this motif of like the periodic table. So the different elements that make up this supervillain.
Which the elements of how society creates its heroes and versus its villains.
Which in and of itself is interesting. However, the problem is in the first episode, we have audio of Daniel Hernandez trying to explain why he's a supervillain. And his explanation is so damn raggedy. He's basically saying that like superheroes always die, but supervillains live forever, and that's why he's a supervillain. Which to me is the opposite is true.
The opposite is true. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that makes no sense. In conjunction,
just look at Marvel.
Yeah. Watch any Marvel film. Also, he tries to explain why he tattooed the number 69 all over his body, and he basically tries to say that like. Because at first you would think like, oh, yin yang, but he's saying like, when you look at the number 69 from any angle, it's always the same. But then he says like, I'm the rich, you're the poor. It makes no damn sense. So there's that. Then Tekashi refers to like some tattoo artist who used to do heroin before he would like do his tattoos. So that's what inspired his name. So all that's raggedy. So then this device of the supervillain and how it's made, one is repetitive. It kind of just keeps saying the same thing. But also it's like it kind of contradicts like this little stupid kid.
It inflates what he is.
Yes.
Which it shouldn't, because he's nowhere there's nothing about him that is that important. No. I feel to justify comparing him to be a supervillain, because that just feeds into this false mythos about him anyway.
But I know people are going to comment like whatever about this because he has a lot of fans. I think that he was very effective in getting attention, which is all he wanted.
Correct. Yeah, he wasn't. I think it's what's interesting, because I am not familiar with his music or his YouTube videos. I was aware of him as a figment across a variety of headlines, especially when he came to be arrested in his public trial events. But
quickly getting back to the doll. It's being narrated by
Giancarlo Esposito,
who I kept thinking sounded like a discount Morgan Freeman, which I think was a poor choice because at first I'm like, oh hell no, Morgan Freeman narrated this? It does sound like him.
Sure.
Like in the style of his voice.
That kind of gravitas. He's doing what he can to inject a little flavor into that, I think.
Again, I think it adds to the sort of false value in what this person accomplished or how he accomplished it.
I agree. And then there, we get a lot of shots of films of like the Joker across from Heath Ledger to Joaquin Phoenix to Jack Nicholson is kind of showing this kind of this clown terror that TEKASHI 6IX9INE is trying to.
But anyway, in addition, continuing with episode 1, we get some other talking heads are a graffiti artist named Hanksy. Mm-hmm. Who I wasn't familiar with, but no. He apparently is popular. And the best part of Hanksy is that he knew Daniel Hernandez before he became TEKASHI 6IX9INE. And he explains that Daniel used to work at a bodega. And there's a picture of him, like he's just a cashier at a bodega. And he talks about how Daniel would constantly harass him, like, please post me, like retweet or whatever the kids do.
Much like the main character on Spree.
Yes. Yeah, actually. And then we also get a popular podcaster apparently named Adam22 mm-hmm. who gives a lot of sort of a critique of Daniel Hernandez.
Yes, there are not a lot of varnished words there.
No. And then the episode 1 ends with the introduction of the 9 Trey gang, mm-hmm. which is the faction of the Bloods TEKASHI 6IX9INE ingratiated himself into. So moving to episode 2, now we're deep into the gang situation, and the leader of this gang, it appears to be like some person named Seqo Billy, mm-hmm. and he created some record label called Treyway Records, mm-hmm. and he talks about how Daniel Hernandez sort of like wiggled his way in, and we understand that like Daniel does not consider himself a rapper. He doesn't think he's a
rapper. That's where I lost my train of thought. I think that's what was interesting to learn is he had no interest in that.
He doesn't even like rap music. He's more of like a punk metal type. So that's why the music he has created is kind of a fusion. But they talk about that. They also introduce a person named Shotti, who's part of the 9 Trey gang, who ultimately becomes TEKASHI's manager. Mm-hmm. And yeah, a lot of it is just like how he used the gang to get clout. But things come to a head because, these gang members are like really supporting this guy, but he's really not like giving anything back. And then we see that he's starting to, the gang, like the Treyway Records gang people create like a music video. And then shortly thereafter, TEKASHI copies it. they say. Like, they show video. To me, it's just like any video, and I can think of a dozen videos in the hood, like where people are sitting on basketball hoops and whatever. But they say that he copied them. So that's where some of the tension starts.
And also not paying people.
Right. We also find out that he has a child sex charge.
Because part of his rise to fame, like his shock value that he immersed himself in was being filmed doing
outlandish things.
Like sexual things turns out with a lot of young women that were in fact minors.
So the one thing they bring up, it looks like it was a charge that might have been like dropped, but they show the court papers and it says that he was 18 and he performed like it's not performed, but it's like he visualized a sexual act with a person who was 13. But it seems like that charge went away because he never went to jail for it, and it doesn't seem that he was convicted of it. But that's something that I guess like haunts him. We also find out that he really supports Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And he likes him because Donald Trump doesn't bite his tongue, and neither does Tekashi, which, whatever. And then the episode 2 ends with apparently TEKASHI 6IX9INE was kidnapped. And there's footage of it because the FBI was like tapping the gang. So the Escalade he was driving in had video cameras in it, which seems like crazy that was the case. So episode 3 begins with why the kidnapping happened. And one of the gang members, Harv, so we see footage of the gang engaged in like violent activity, like fights, shooting people, and there's one person who's in all of those, and it's this person named Harv who had Tekashi's back but never got paid. So he kidnapped him and like
got his mama's jewelry.
Got his jewelry, which was valued at like $45,000. So we hear about that, and then that's when Tekashi gets arrested. Like they raid his apartment. They find all this stuff. We also find out that there's also footage of like how at the peak of his fame, before he was like to go to trial, he had worked with like Nicki Minaj, which I guess I knew that. And then like he had an affiliation with 50 Cent, and like there's video of Kanye West saying he loves TEKASHI 6IX9INE.
All the best.
Yeah. We also hear a story from his girlfriend Sarah, who's been talking throughout the documentary about how they went to Dubai and he whooped her ass.
And which was not the first time. Not
the first time, but that was the last time. So she left him at that point. And then it's just the court case, and there's no video of the court case. There's some audio, and the only audio they play is him just snitching, like, which is like so uncomfortable. Again, 11 of his fellow gang members get jail time while he just gets that little 8 months on house arrest. And that's it. We see like him post house arrest, like sort of in modern time, like thinking that he's like the greatest that ever lived. But then it ends with like his sales and, engagement don't match his claims. So where will he go next? The end. So what I found most effective in the documentary is there's the editor-in-chief of Rolling Stone, whose name I don't recall, but he did a very good job breaking down like his impression of why Tekashi's popular. And I thought that was effective, but it's very simple. This kid just wanted attention.
I liked the best sound. He has that person has many good sound bites, but talking about TEKASHI 6IX9INE's use of the N-word, and he just said he just doesn't want to come up with anything to rhyme.
Okay, my final thoughts on this are, first of all, well, no, I mean, from my notes were that it really bothers me that this kid likes to use the N-word a lot. It also bothers me that he used this gang that is primarily composed of black men to support his career, and then he just turns his back on them.
Oh yeah, of course he was using them.
And I just wonder, like,
he's a culture vulture for sure.
And it just makes me think, like, we do get some of the gang members talking, three in particular, well, 2 plus 1. Who's not a gang member, but he, as he says, is in these streets. 3 guys who worked with Tekashi who weren't arrested because they kind of fell back when things started to get hot because they knew he was on some bullshit. And we do kind of get a sense of why they did it. I I think the one, Seqo Billy, who was the head of the record label initially, because Shotti, the one who got the most time,
Harv got the most.
Oh, Harv got the most time. Shotti got like 11 years,
15
years. He created another Treyway Records, but spelled it differently, and there was some weird stuff with that. And he kind of idolized like Suge Knight and Death Row Records, so that was weird. But obviously, Seqo Billy saw an opportunity with TEKASHI 6IX9INE, like we can make some money off this clown. So that makes sense to me. And then the other guy who had just come out of prison, he seemed like a sweet guy. When we first meet him, I forget his name, but he walks in wearing a face mask and like a latte from Starbucks. I thought he was really cute and thoughtful. But he just kind of explained like he was just part of this lifestyle, didn't know any better.
He had a really good comment too about how TEKASHI 6IX9INE he doesn't even know any of the words to Biggie's music.
Oh yeah, he's like, how are you from Brooklyn and you don't know any Biggie? I really like that guy. Yeah. And then his DJ,
is it Punch?
I think it's DJ Punch, who worked with TEKASHI. He's not a gang member, but he worked with TEKASHI a lot, and he kind of explains like the change he saw in him, primarily due to money and fame. Honestly, I found those people more interesting than TEKASHI 6IX9INE himself, because
TEKASHI 6IX9INE is not really very interesting because there's no substance. He doesn't stand for anything clearly, and has nothing interesting to say. He just wants to be a clown because, as the director says, this is supposed to be a cautionary tale about attention economy. And I was very leery about watching this because I didn't want it to be something, from what I knew about TEKASHI 6IX9INE, this is not something I wanted to watch glorifying him, and it really, of course, does exactly opposite. But the way that, the way the first episode is set up, and the soundtrack, which I did like, uses a lot of kind of old vintage school tracks over him. It's not a hip-hop soundtrack, but the score composed for it, I thought they were gearing up to tell us that this kid had like a Richard Ramirez style childhood.
Oh, right, yes. The music initially, I thought, it's like, he's going to be interesting. No, he's just a little tiny guy.
What happened to him?
Yeah, he's just like a little geeky guy who just wanted attention. I think this documentary series is a good example of quality filmmaking with a subject that is interesting in that so the Rolling Stone guy also makes another really comment. He makes a good comment because he talks about the sort of moral obligation of reporters to not give like credence to bad people, basically. And he says that his intention was he's more fascinated by the people who are fascinated by TEKASHI 6IX9INE.
Sure, which is the reason to watch this.
Which is the reason to watch this documentary. But I think, it's just like the actual person is not that interesting.
No, and well, shock value only goes so far. And I think, like I brought up Lady Gaga after we first watched this, and kind of my initial turn off towards her was that this is all done for such obvious. It's pandering. It's just attention. And is there any substance behind it? And it turns out, I feel like in the case of Daniel Hernandez, no.
But it doesn't really matter what we think because he obviously is very popular and he must connect with people in some way. So that's great for him, I guess, and the people who like him. It's just unfortunate that...
Well, it's just like Trump or Kanye West. Like, of course, those people are going to have their followings and their fans. But
so this documentary is not revealing some like mysterious social phenomenon. It's very obvious why he became popular, why people like him.
I didn't think the third episode was... I like trial proceedings, and listening to the audio I thought was fascinating because the DA is very clear on what he's asking him by saying, at what point did you decide to work with the government? And the day after.
And he cooperated fully. Like, this clown cooperated fully.
He is a Judas if I ever saw one.
My last thought after finishing the documentary was like, someone's gonna kill TEKASHI 6IX9INE. Like, I just don't see, like, if I were him, I would never leave the house.
It's cute. It's cute to be eating your ice cream, being pulled around in a wagon, but I mean, I guess if those bodyguards are never around. I was reading, because this only goes basically through right after house arrest, kind of.
Right.
There was an incident in October where he claimed he had collapsed after ODing on hydroxycut at a McDonald's or something. So clearly, this is a person who just is an attention whore. And if you are attracted to those kinds of people, I mean, have at it. But
what would you give this documentary?
I guess it held my attention, and watching it back to back. I would also recommend watching this all at once, and I don't know if it's just because I'm so conditioned to binge watching now.
Oh, I agree with you, because I think the episodes are not, like, the delineation between the three is not strong enough to make me think that I would watch them 1 week apart.
Yeah.
So yes, I would agree. Just wait and just watch all three together.
But kind of fascinating in their own sense, especially as to somebody that I was more or less quite ignorant to. 3 out of 5.
I would give it 3 out of 5 as well. Thank you.
Bye.